Good morning, Kingsley community. Pastor Colleen Wehrman here, coming to you with another daily devotion for Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. And again, I'm using The Chosen 40 Days with Jesus. Today's devotion is day 12, Rejected. And this, I kind of hinted at it yesterday when Jesus read from the scroll of Isaiah in his hometown. Here's the rest of the story. Luke 4:24 and then 28 through 30. And then Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, no prophet is acceptable in his hometown." When they heard these things, all in the synagogue were filled with wrath, and they rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the part of a hill on which their town was built, so they could throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went away. That's interesting. Passing through their midst. I mean, if they were going to chase him out of town, did they lose him? Did they not recognize him? Sounds like a God thing to me. So let's hear from the writers of The Chosen. And they write, quote, "As the saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt," which means when Jesus went home for a visit, it didn't go so great. He attended synagogue, and that was like their church. And he volunteered to read. That would be like the liturgist or the scripture reader. When he sat back down and said, "Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing," they seemed cool with it. Jesus was being gracious enough, but being gracious enough, odd but gracious, so they spoke well of him. But then Jesus didn't return the favor. Knowing their hearts, he responded with, "No prophet is accepted in his hometown." It was a dig. He followed up with a reminder that Elijah and Elisha weren't sent to heal their own people because it would have been a waste of their time. Ufda. I don't know what that means, but that's what they have. Jesus effectively told his hometown crowd they had the same issue as their Old Testament relatives, and they came unglued. So much so, they wanted him dead. Extreme? Yes. Expected? You bet. That day, Jesus had read from the prophet Isaiah, who proclaimed the coming Messiah, along with the promise the Messiah's presence would engender from humankind. He would be despised and rejected. Sad. These people knew Jesus. They should have been all the more in awe of God's power and authority clearly on display. I mean, what the heck else could it be? He was the carpenter who grew up with them, and now he was preaching and healing all over the place. But we tend to reject anything or anyone that represents a big change in understanding or perspective, even if it comes from someone familiar, especially when it's someone familiar. The notion that what they thought they knew could be wrong was as incomprehensible as the notion of changing your mind in a Facebook argument. So they hardened their hearts, hated him, and tried to push him off the cliff. In so doing, they fulfilled the Old Testament prophecy. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hid their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. That's Isaiah 53:3. Oh, how the irony, the writers write. So Jesus read the scroll of Isaiah, and to say it has become fulfilled in your hearing meant he was claiming to be God. And then they started grumbling and murmuring and wondering, what he was talking about. And then all of a sudden he said, a prophet is not welcome in their hometown. And that immediately brought to mind how the people, their ancestors, rejected the prophets and killed the prophets. And so here they go, ready to send Jesus off a cliff for stating that he was the Messiah or is the Messiah. So here's a couple questions to ponder. Are you more likely to accept advice or godly counsel from a close friend or a mere acquaintance? Why or why not? Interesting. Or what do you think caused the people to despise and reject Jesus? What was in it that caused you to reject him prior to your salvation? That's a bigger question. And when was the last time you changed your perspective or realized you were wrong about something significant? If it's hard to remember, that might be something to work on. So, I don't know about you, but sometimes we think, could that person really be a follower of Christ? I mean, because I remember their past life. They were pretty much a partier and a druggie, or they swore like sailors. Are they really a pastor, or are they really a follower of Christ? I shouldn't take advice from them because of the way they were. Now, Jesus Jesus always has been. But some kind of lesson for us there is, do we take advice from only people that we think are real popular and real strong? And then we get to know them, and then all of a sudden we see that they're human, and maybe we don't take their advice as much. Remember that God speaks through his church, which are the believers of Jesus Christ. So one of the lessons I've learned real quick on being a pastor is that a lot of times what comes out of the mouth of babes is very theological. So next time that you think that it's just a kid, or it's just a teenager, or it's just that, mom down the street, what could she possibly know about theological study, or what could she possibly know about God, or what could he possibly know about God? Know that God works through those that the world views as weak. And we view older people as weak. We view children as weak and unimportant. We, in the field that I'm in the pastorate, sometimes they view women as weak. And I just want you to know that God clearly states in his Bible that he will use the weak of the world to show the world his strength. Because it's not about us and our strength, it's about God and his strength. So if you have a problem admitting you're wrong, or a problem listening to someone that you might not think really knows much about God, know that God can work through anyone. And you might just be surprised at who he works on you with. It might just be that neighbor that you can't ever imagine could ever be a church follower because he's so grumpy. Well, he might just be a church follower and he's working on his own issues. And in the meantime, he might have something theological to say, or something from the Spirit of God to say to you. And through him, he's going to do that. So don't poo-poo it. Don't write it off. God often uses our enemies to speak truth to us as well. So that's a hard one to swallow. But a lot of times in a heated debate or a conflict, somebody's speaking some truth to us. We just have to open our ears and hear it. So know that God will use the weak because that will show his strength. God will use our enemies because that will make us listen. So I hope you enjoyed this devotion, and tomorrow we will move on to the next day with the chosen, and I will see you then. Enjoy the